everybody. My name is Lindsay from the deal team at Rise. I'm speaking today with Jamie Sylvian, the founder of Rise Strategies, and we're going to talk about joint venture acquisitions.
Hey Lindsay, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you, Jamie?
Not bad at all. Keeping busy. Thanks for jumping on the call. Appreciate it.
No, it's nice to talk to you. And just, it'd be nice just to get a little bit of history of Jamie and how did you end up being in M&A?
By accident, mainly by accident. So I've never, as my mother would tell you, I've never had a job. I started in business since I left school, and the usual successes and failures as a young guy. But the big deal I got involved in was I put a deal together with Lord Milford Haven, Lord Mountbatten, and we set up a little company called Syra Utilities, which is a marketing business, only because it was connected to another business I was running at the time, and that was in the deregulated gas market. So we were the guys who had hundreds and hundreds of people out on the streets knocking on doors selling gas contracts, and it was really the wild west. It was absolutely crazy. But the money was amazing because it had never been done before. Nobody had ever thought of that. And the only reason the door knocking thing happened is because I'd had a door knocking business before. I'd had a direct marketing company, so it all kind of fitted quite nicely. But eventually it became tricky to do that, running a business like that. So eventually we started going digital because that was coming on strong. And the company eventually got rebranded as uswitch.com, which again is still a huge company now, it's a household name in the UK. So I was the joint founder of that, and Uswitch sold for 210 million in 2006 to a private equity company, EW Scripps, based out of New York in the US. And from there, I took some time off, and then I started just buying businesses and buying and selling. It was really just kind of fell into this world. So it was an interesting way to get in there. I never went to university to study or any of that stuff. I just kind of I learned by doing, as they say.
Sure. So impressive. Thanks for that. And in terms of now, obviously you've founded Rise Strategies. What sort of things do Rise do?
Well, we focus on two key areas, three if you include the sale of businesses. But the two main areas that we work in is virtual mergers, which is where we take businesses and we do a non-integrated merger. So it's quite sector specific. Yeah. And the other thing to do is joint ventures with company owners they're looking for a way to grow. Most companies grow organically. It's a kind of it's a safe bet, but it also takes forever to do, and it's risky. Yeah. So what we do is we take companies and we help them, and we partner up with them to buy companies that they then run.
Okay, so it sounds interesting. So just give me a little bit more clarity on a joint venture acquisition. How does it work exactly?
Okay. So let's say you run a manufacturing business. You're turning over £5 million, dollars, euros, doesn't really matter what it is. And you would say to us, okay, look, we're looking at growth. We want an acquisition. We're not sure how this works. What can we do? So my strategy is to say, okay, well, let's not just look at one acquisition. Let's look at building an acquisition strategy. So you're in this example, Lizzie, you're the owner of that business. I have a specialism in joint ventures and mergers and acquisitions. I can go out and find those deals, and we start to build, buy, build, and sell. We're starting to bolt companies onto your existing business, and that gives you the revenues, that gives you the staff, that gives you basically the exit firepower that you need to really make a big splash when you do exit the business.
Okay, so are you saying then I could have one acquisition and be happy, or I could do 10?
Yeah, you could do 10, you could do 20. That's dependent on appetite for this kind of an opportunity. It depends on on plans. It depends on when you want to sell all this stuff. That may be in 5 years' time, and we'll keep going with acquisitions. But the idea is ultimately we focus on the exit. Our first day is focusing on the last day. How do we get as much value for you as the business owner through acquisitions? And through growing by bolting on these businesses to your existing company.
Okay, interesting. And isn't this a risky strategy for a company?
You know, every business owner understands risk. Everyone's involved in it. We're involved in it every day. But what we do in order to keep business owners safe is that, again, let's go back to the manufacturing company. We find a manufacturing company within that sector that's a perfect fit. We go and do the deal. We'll raise the funds, etc. But what we will do is we will normally, it's not all the time, but normally we will buy the assets out of that company and not the equity in the business. So we're going to buy the assets, and we drop those assets into a different company, so it's nice and clean.
Yeah.
And that protects. But should that go wrong, that is a separate business. It's a limited liability company. So let's say something goes wrong, something goes horrible, the industry collapses tomorrow. Yeah. That the existing company of our partners is not affected in any way. We just shut it down.
Excellent, thanks for that. So who would benefit from being involved?
Well, I think anyone who, you know, it is a certain type of person, because it's kind of a dynamic world. The deal making world is actually, it's great fun. You know, it can be stressful too at times. I think somebody who's considering either their exit because they want to retire in 3, 4, 5 years time, or somebody who's possibly younger who says, well, you know, this is a great way to get onto this and to grow fast. It's obviously a much faster way to grow than an organic operation or model.
Okay. I heard the term deal stack around. Could you just take me through how a deal stack works with Rise? Yeah,
sure. So when most people think of an acquisition strategy, again, let's go back to the manufacturing. Normally, what their first thought is, well, if I buy a competitor, of course that makes an awful lot of sense, because when they buy the competitor, they can integrate, they're buying in the customers. You know, that makes a lot of sense. But it's also quite limiting, because not all of their competitors want to sell. They might be in a specialized sector or whatever. You know, it does limit business. But I'll give you an example. We have seven strategies in our deal stack. I'll give you a good example of one. So I'm working with an e-commerce business, and they are in the nutrition space. So yes, of course, they can buy another nutrition e-commerce company, and that's what we're doing with them. But think of this, taking them as a really good example. If you go onto Facebook today and you just search for groups for nutrition, for wellness, for health, there are countless thousands of them. And so people are running these pages on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and, you know, all the other stuff, but we'll stick with Facebook.
Yeah.
And they have 10, 20, 30, 200,000, 300,000 people, 200, 300,000 eyeballs on their page whenever they make a post. And they are perfect. They are the perfect market for the e-commerce business, because that's exactly what they're interested in. So I would say to our partners and our clients and say, look, rather than we will buy a competitor if and when we can, but in the meantime, let's go and buy a media company. So you can't buy a page of a Facebook page, you can't buy it, but what you can buy is the rights to the admin. So you can buy out the person who set up that page, and then you've got, as a nutrition company or whatever business you're in, you then have immediate access to exactly the companies that are buying your product. It'd be exactly the same people as buying your products and services. So that's just one strategy. The other one was we may go and buy, let's say there's deal stacks, so there's 7, and there's all sorts of iterations of how we do this stuff. But another one would be, let's say you've got a company and you want to start a sales team. Well, you know, there's risks involved in that, because it's expensive to onboard, it's expensive to train. You have the costs of the overhead costs. Why not go and buy a sales team that you can fold into the business that you've already got? It's already existing, it's already making money, it's already profitable. So why not buy a business instead of try and build that from scratch? You just start the next day with a company in place or with a team in place.
Okay, thanks for that. So just to show that I understand, so you're saying that someone signing up for this could target far more companies than just competitors. Competitors is one part of this.
Yeah, absolutely. There's 7, and we do it strategically. So let's say again, going back to the media company. Let's say you're a company, an e-commerce company, and you acquire a media Facebook page with 300,000 eyeballs on it. You then need the infrastructure to be able to take care of those. So let's buy a company that takes care of the infrastructure. Probably somebody in the supply chain. Why, instead of paying them a check every month for the work that they do, why not buy into your supply chain and profit from that as well? Okay. You know, we can do the deal. We have the wherewithal to make those deals happen. Why not do it that way? And then we start to build a group that has revenues and values.
Okay, thanks. So Just something else I was interested in terms of rise value, sort of used to buy a company for as little as money as possible. Take me through that. How does that explain that a little bit to me?
Okay, so that's our funding stack. So we have a deal stack, which is what we do, and the funding stack is how we make that acquisition happen. So let's say anyone watching this video, they're interested in buying a competitor, buying an asset, a digital asset, whatever. If you go to the bank, first of all, it's tricky. Banks are notoriously tricky to borrow money from these days. But also, it's not what has to happen. So I'll give you a great example. Let's say there's a video on this site actually somewhere, Lindsay, that our viewers can have a look at how this works. Let's say we're going after, let's say it's £1 million for this business. Okay, so they're a £300,000 EBITDA business. They're selling at 3 times EBITDA, so roughly 900 to £1 million, by the time it's all done. And this can be pounds, dollars, yen, euros, so it doesn't matter. The structure is exactly the same globally. So instead of writing a check for £1 million, which is risky and pricey and etc., why not do a deal like this? My job was working with companies and partners in this deal. I would go to that, having found that business and they're interested in selling, I would sit down with that seller or in a Zoom environment like this and say, okay, look, you want to sell your business. And most businesses don't sell. Bottom line, small SME, most companies don't sell. They end up closing their doors or giving it away. But I said to them, look, it's a little bit expensive for your business, but we like the idea of it. We're happy, but here's how I want to do the deal. This is how we can make this happen for you. I would like you, just as an example, a really simple example, I would like you to do vendor funding. So we will pay you for the business over a period of 4 years. Well, he's going to push back and say, no, that's not a great deal for me. I'll say, okay, well, how about half? Okay, so let's say he's agreed to half. Now, the negotiation I've just done means we don't have to find £500,000 to buy that business. Yeah. We've got to find the other £500,000, but I'll get to that next. So that's part of the deal stack. Mm-hmm. The second part of the deal stack in this example is I go into that company, we have a look at their numbers, and then I would go to an asset funding business and say, here are the numbers on this business. We're looking at this as an acquisition opportunity. And these are all people in my network, Lindsay, so this is a phone call. We give them the numbers and they come back and they say, all right, look, we've looked at it. We can give you 80% of the value of all of this stuff, whatever it might be. Yeah. And that's, so that works out at 30% of the overall price. So we now don't have to think about the 50% because it's vendor finance, which can be financed out of the revenues that the business will produce over the next 4 years. We've got another 30% taking us to 80% of the business because we've gone to an asset funding company and they're paying that. They're going to give us that cash. So that will be sitting in the bank the minute we take over. And then we've got 20% left. Yeah. Okay, so let's say so here's a good example. Let's say I go back to the vendor and I'll say to them, you obviously trust what we're doing because you've left 50% of their business and you've met now the people who are interested in taking over the business. They're going to drive it forward. They have no intention of just leaving it as it is. They want to grow this business. You're tired, you're retiring, whatever the deal is, you want out. But these guys are going to grow it. Here's my suggestion. Leave that. We don't pay you for that 20%. You keep it as equity. Yeah. So he sits there with his 20%, and he'll do that because the value is £200,000, 20% of the £1 million price tag, right? Mm-hmm. £200,000. So he's leaving that in because he's going to retain 20%. Yeah. The deal for him is that 20% in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time won't be worth £200,000. It'll be worth 500, 600, 700, whatever. It may also be worth less, of course, caveats and all that stuff. But the idea and the fact that we have his trust because he's already doing vendor financing, he'll say, well, for the next 4 years, he's going to get his salary anyway because the company will be paying him every month. And in the meantime, so he doesn't need that 20% of money. Yeah. Of course, sometimes he does, but in this instance. So he leaves that 20% in. We've just worked out the funding, Lindsay, to get 100% of that company. We've taken over that business and we haven't actually put any money into the deal. And he's getting money because the 30% from the assets will go to him or there's some deal. And so we have, so a bank will work out the numbers and say, we can lend you this and this is the rates. We say, let's not do that. Let's do it creative. This is exactly what I do every day, Lindsay, is I put these deals together and I will work out what best way to do it. That's a very simple process, that one. I've got other ones, and there's examples around the site somewhere if anyone wants to have a look. Of there may be 15 little slices of the pie that we do. As long as it works financially, and as long as you can take control of the business with as little outlay as possible, that's what we do. So we put these deals together. So I would bring that deal back to the company owner and say, here's a deal that we've already agreed for you. This is how it works. We've crunched the numbers. This is why it's a good deal. Shall we pull the trigger on this and acquire the business?
Excellent, that makes sense. So you talk about acquisition value line being the whole point for doing this. Can you just explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is the whole point. I always say the first day on a deal is thinking about the last day on the deal, which is the big exit, and that doesn't have to be on the horizon. That can be sometime in the future. The acquisition value line is this. Let's say again, we'll go back to you owning the manufacturing company, Lindsay. So we're talking about, you've got your core business. This is the business you run right now. What I will do is I'm looking for businesses that are a nice strategic fit to what you do. But I'm looking for quite small businesses. And the reason why, I'm looking for businesses which are called unsophisticated SMEs. I'll give you a good example. So you're running a great tight ship. You've got good accounting platform, software. You've got automation all over the place. What if I go and find a company that the owner wants to retire? He's 63, 65, he wants to retire. And I look at that business and there is no marketing guy. Why? Because, for the last 35 years, he's just had the same customers and it's a nice lifestyle business. And to be fair, he doesn't go in more than twice a week. And his accounting is done by Mavis, who's been there from day one.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have, his CFO is actually his accountant down the road. See what I mean? So there's a business that's very, very unsophisticated. And that is reflected in the value of acquiring that business. So let's say I say to him, well, look, your EBITDA last year, or average over the last 3 years, was £200,000. So your business is worth about £600,000.
Yeah.
Roughly 3 times EBITDA, just as a nice ballpark figure.
Yeah.
So we buy it and we do the deal stack that I mentioned earlier. So we buy it, we structure the deal so it's as good as possible that we can get this deal for. And then we move that company into our partner deal, into our joint venture deal. Immediately, it becomes more sophisticated because Mavis is no longer there. She's gone. So we take all of that accounting and that's dropped into the new business. So that switches across. So that's modernized. We also need somebody in marketing, and we can afford it because of the aggregated revenues that the business has got. Or your existing business may have a marketing team. They start marketing it. That becomes more sophisticated. The accountant, we just let him go, and that all of the numbers move over to the CFO that you've already got in your business. Sure. So all of that takes a 3 times EBITDA business, moves it across one level to become a sophisticated SME as part of a group, and that alone increases its value within the group that we're doing. And the purpose of doing that and doing that as many times as we can, as many times as our joint venture partners are comfortable with, is because the next stage is also we've made them all sophisticated. They are no longer, so the aggregated revenues or the revenues have gone. These are all £500,000 revenue, £1 million revenue. We've moved them all under the next silo, where now we have a £20 million business. Yeah. The thing about 20 million GBP, $30 million, 25 million euros, is those businesses are much, much easier to get onto the radar of private equity companies, of family offices, and of large trade buyers. Right. And you are no longer selling at 3 times EBITDA. That, by getting into that stage and moving it across, you might be on 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times EBITDA. So the whole value proposition is much, much better for business owners.
Got you. That's brought a lot of transparency. Thanks for that. Yeah. So we're now into a joint venture deal. How does that work?
Okay. The joint venture part of this is why Rise exists. Okay. We will become the plug and play mergers and acquisitions team for our partners. We will go out and find the businesses. We will engage with the potential sellers of the businesses. We will value them. We will look at how the business will fit. We will negotiate price. We will get the best deal we can. We will implement our deal stack and our funding stack to make sure that this thing works. And then we hand over the business when we're ready. We've done all the due diligence, all of the legals, all of that stuff has been taken care of. When the deal's done, it's through a separate, I mentioned earlier in protection, it's through a separate company.
Yeah.
That company that we set up to take the assets of the business is 80% owned by our partner and 20% owned by Rise. Okay. So we are in it for the long term.
Yeah.
They are getting a deal team to put these things together. And also, our partners, all they have to do is focus on running and building the business that they do. They don't have to learn M&A. They don't have to learn all the stuff that I've been doing for years and all our team. They have a full spec deal team bringing these deals in, for which we're paid, or we earn 20% of the deal. So immediately it comes across, they're 80% owners on the 20.
So Rise are providing the expertise effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Does this work for sort of startups, and again with sort of seed funding element of M&A?
Yeah. Yes, it does. It does in the sense that we can still go out, but there has to be, the business has to be solid, because when I go, let's say it's a startup that's been going for 3 weeks, I go and try and position that business to the seller of another company. That's tricky. That we need a bit of history. We need a bit of a few grey hairs in the deal, so they can see how this works. So it's not completely out of fund. We don't do seed funding. We don't do the investments in that sense.
Yeah.
But we bring our value. We bring our team to put these things together.
Okay. You mentioned earlier on about that when the acquisition is made, the company takes 8% and Rise have 20%.
Yeah.
In terms of that equity, can they buy that back from Rise?
Yeah, well, we're deal makers, Lindsay. It's what we do.
Yeah.
So if it's appropriate, and a company says, we're changing our plans. Are you interested in selling us your that share of the business? Then let's grab a coffee and talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So in terms of, obviously you've got their existing business and you've got this new acquisition, can they merge those two at some point?
Yeah, we don't advise it in the early days. We think it should be siloed. But as the business goes down the road, and as it may make sense to integrate. But when you're selling to private equity, it's a lot easier to sell, for them to be able to say, well, we really like that piece of the business, but we're going to carve that one out and sell it to somebody else, or we're just going to close it or integrate it. In terms of integration, the easiest way to think about it is this, Lindsay, is let's leave the integration in this framework. Let's leave the integration to the private equity company, because that's kind of what they like to do.
Okay. That makes sense. Thanks for that. And so, obviously, in terms of this is a joint venture, how much does that cost, and what's included in those costs? Okay,
so other than the 20% equity partnership, so there's a standard fee to come on board, and that really is to allow us to onboard a company, to spend our time with them, talking to them, making sure we're getting the strategy right. That's £6,997.
Okay.
And that includes the management fee for a month, and then we have a management fee per month, which is £2,997, which pays for the entire deal team. So anything that goes on at our end is covered in that fee.
Yeah.
One thing to think about is, if anybody's looking at this and giving this some thought, is actually that £3,000 can be paid out of the first company that's acquired. So there is a payment to be made first to get on board. There's a payment until, let's say, we're 3 months down the road. But the way the numbers can work is that they can charge out our services to the other companies that are being acquired.
Right.
So there's a lot of clever tricks that can be done in terms of paying our team. But you imagine a full deal team, plug and play, out there looking for your businesses for £3,000, or the US dollar or euro equivalent, of course.
Yeah. So can with the management fee, that's only payable until the acquisition is made?
Well, it's payable as long as the relationship's going on. Yeah. So if we're looking for businesses, it's payable. If we stop looking for businesses, then of course, there's no service being provided.
Thanks for that, Jamie. It's fascinating. So if a company owner is interested in exploring, this opportunity further, the joint venture opportunity with Rise, what's their next steps?
Okay. Before we even get into the numbers, it's whether I can work with the owner of the company. I'm all about relationships. I'm all about the culture of their business and making sure, not that I necessarily understand their business, I don't really have to, but how, the type of person that I'm working with, and that's really important to me. I just want people who are go-getters who want to get this thing done. They're excited about the fact that you could start with a 3, 2 or 3 or £1 million business and just continuously grow for the next 3, 4, 5 years and then sell it. If that excites you, somebody who's looking at this video, Lindsay, then jump on the call. Let's book a call. That you can book a call on the website. Just click on the contact, book a call. Let's get into a conversation. There's no commitment. Let's just have a call. See if it works.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thanks for your time today, Jamie. That's been wonderful. Hopefully that's helped to explain to a lot of business owners looking into joint ventures how Rise could really help them grow the business. Thank you for your time.
I hope so too. Lindsay, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Thank you.